What happens when your neighbor, the one you have always quietly outranked, suddenly shows up at the same party? For 18 years, Formula One in Southeast Asia meant one thing: Singapore. The night race at Marina Bay, the floodlit skyline, world-class entertainment, global brands, and a weekend that had become one of the most recognizable events on the entire F1 calendar. Singapore had made the race its own. Then, in July 2026, everything changed. Formula One announced that Malaysia would host a Grand Prix at the Sepang International Circuit, just 1 week before Singapore's own race. For the first time in 9 years, there would be 2 Formula One Grands Prix in Southeast Asia within days of each other. The question that immediately followed was the one nobody in Singapore wanted to ask out loud: is this good or bad for us? To understand what happened, you need to go back to the Middle East. The ongoing conflict in the region forced the cancellation of 2 early season races in 2026. Formula One needed a replacement venue fast. Dozens of circuits were considered. Malaysia got the call, and it was not hard to see why. The infrastructure was already there. The history with the sport was already there. All it needed was a reason to reopen. The arrangement that followed was diplomatically elegant and financially almost too good to refuse. Bahrain retained the Grand Prix name, the commercial rights, and all ticket revenue. Malaysia simply had to prepare the circuit and open its doors, and in doing so, would pocket everything that comes with hosting a global sporting event without actually paying to host one. The tourism spending, the hotel bookings, the packed restaurants, the international television cameras pointed at Sepang. All of that would land on Malaysian soil regardless of whose name was on the trophy. That matters enormously when you understand why Malaysia walked away from Formula One in the first place. When Malaysia last hosted its own Grand Prix in 2017, the government was spending hundreds of millions of ringgit annually to stage the race while getting almost nothing back. Attendance had collapsed. The economics were brutal. So Malaysia did what any rational government would do. It stopped writing the check. This time, someone else was writing it, and all Malaysia had to do was show up. The response was immediate. Accommodation near the circuit was snapped up almost instantly after the announcement, with prices climbing sharply as demand surged. Economists projected the event could generate over R1 billion in economic activity across tourism, hospitality, aviation, and retail. For a government running an ambitious national tourism campaign, a Formula One race landing in its lap at virtually no cost was the kind of opportunity that does not come twice. On paper, Malaysia had pulled off something remarkable. A Grand Prix weekend at a fraction of the usual cost, with almost all of the economic upside landing on its side of the ledger. None of that is lost on Singapore. And the concerns, even if rarely stated directly, are real. The most immediate is sponsorship. For the first time in nearly a decade, brands targeting Southeast Asian audiences suddenly face a choice they have never had to make before. Do you concentrate your entire marketing budget on Singapore, premium, globally recognized, expensive, or do you split it across 2 races in the same region within the same week? That conversation is happening in boardrooms right now, and some of that budget, which has historically flowed entirely to Singapore, may not this year. Then there is the ticket price gap. Singapore sits among the most expensive races on the entire Formula One calendar. Sepang, operating under Bahrain's commercial arrangements, is expected to be significantly more affordable. The kind of price difference that makes a casual fan reconsider their options. For someone in Southeast Asia who has always wanted to watch a live Grand Prix but balked at Singapore's prices, Sepang has just become a genuinely accessible alternative. And there is a subtler pressure too. Formula One's global fan base has nearly doubled over the past 7 years, driven in large part by the sport's transformation into a mainstream entertainment phenomenon. That expanded, younger, more diverse audience is exactly what Singapore has been cultivating as its own. Having a competing race next door, even for just 1 year, introduces noise into a conversation Singapore has previously owned without contest. Singapore's Grand Prix has always carried an implicit claim. This is Southeast Asia's race, the one that matters on the global stage. A full, loud, successful weekend at Sepang, even under Bahrain's name, quietly challenges that claim in the regional imagination. And perceptions, once shifted, are not always easy to reverse. But history tells a different story. The last time both countries raced in the same season, the evidence was more reassuring than the fears. Malaysia and Singapore hosted back-to-back Grand Prix in 2016 and 2017. Sepang tickets were considerably cheaper. A more affordable race was sitting right next door. And yet, Singapore's attendance did not suffer. It grew. The presence of a cheaper neighbouring event did not pull fans away from Marina Bay. If anything, the regional energy around having 2 Southeast Asian races on the calendar appears to have helped both. The reason becomes clear when you understand that these are not the same audience chasing the same experience. Singapore draws a specific kind of visitor. Internationally travelled, high-spending, there as much for the spectacle, the entertainment, and the city itself as for the sport. Sepang draws a different crowd. Fans who want a traditional permanent circuit, real racing, genuine overtaking opportunities, and a more straightforward weekend without the premium price tag. These are not 2 groups competing for the same tickets. They are 2 entirely different audiences who may never have considered attending the same race in the first place. The racing itself underlines that difference. Sepang is a purpose-built circuit with long straights and room for proper wheel-to-wheel battles. Singapore is a narrow street circuit winding through a floodlit city at night. Technically unforgiving, visually spectacular, and unlike almost anything else on the calendar. Watching Formula One at Sepang and watching it at Marina Bay are not the same experience. They are not even comparable. Singapore also arrives at this year's race with something new. For the first time, the Singapore Grand Prix will feature an F1 sprint, making it one of only a handful of circuits worldwide to host the format. That means more on-track action across all 3 days, an additional competitive session that did not previously exist, and a fresh reason to attend for fans who may have been before. The race is not standing still while Sepang returns. And the proximity that creates competitive pressure also creates a fantastic opportunity. Fans are already thinking about it this way. International visitors who have come for Sepang are looking at flights and hotels for Singapore the following week. Fans based in Singapore who could never justify the cost of flying to a European race can now watch one in Malaysia and stay for the home event days later. The back-to-back scheduling that looks threatening on paper is, from a fan's perspective, something close to a dream. One trip to Southeast Asia, 2 completely different races, neither one quite like the other. That fan instinct points towards something bigger. The real opportunity here is not about competition at all. It is about what happens when you stop treating these 2 races as rivals and start thinking about them as a regional package. Industry voices have already started making that case, suggesting the 2 events could be marketed jointly as a Southeast Asian doubleheader, with travel packages crossing both countries and a deliberate effort to position the region as a single motorsport destination. Singapore wraps its racing in a city, a skyline, and a music extravaganza. Sepang strips it back to the circuit itself. Together, they offer something more compelling than either could deliver on its own. For Malaysia, the bigger question is what happens after October. This return to Sepang is officially a one-off. Bahrain's name is on the race. Bahrain's money paid for it. Whether this becomes a permanent comeback will depend on whether the economic and tourism returns can justify what was always an eye-watering hosting fee. The same fee that forced Malaysia off the calendar in the first place. A successful October weekend reopens that conversation. A poor one closes it for another generation. Singapore's long-term interest, then, lies not in hoping Sepang stumbles. A struggling event next door serves nobody. But in ensuring that if Malaysia does return permanently, the 2 races are framed as a regional destination rather than direct competitors. Singapore's night race built its reputation over nearly 2 decades by being unlike anything else in the region. A daytime race at a permanent circuit in Malaysia does not change what Marina Bay is. What it changes is the region around it, and that, handled correctly, does not weaken Singapore's position. It strengthens the entire neighbourhood. The question is not who wins. It is whether both countries are smart enough to realise they never had to compete in the first place. And while the engines prepare to roar at Sepang, something far darker is unfolding elsewhere in Malaysia. Forest City, the country's infamous ghost town, has just made international headlines again, and not for the reasons anyone hoped. What exactly happened inside those empty towers? Watch this video to find out.